Hello everybody, it's Anna and welcome back to my booktube channel. Today is going to be my long-awaited video that's going to be about what happens when an adaptation goes terribly wrong. So I want to go ahead and preface this by saying that when I was in college, one of the courses that I took for my English major was this course about internet literature. And one aspect of this topic that we focused on was adaptation, specifically if you're adapting a work of art from a textual medium to a visual medium. I made a lot of really weird projects for that class, including a screenplay that is probably best left forgotten. But the one thing that I really remember from that course being drilled into my head over and over and over again by the professor is that the adaptation does not owe anything to the original source material. So this means that when you take something like a novel and try to adapt it into, say, something like a screenplay, you don't have to preserve every word, every scene, every character in that original novel. You just have to make a good story that can stand alone as its own amazing work of art. Which brings me to the adaptation in question. Meg, Jo, Beth, and Amy by Ray Terciero and Brie Indigo is a graphic novel adaptation of Little Women, arguably one of the most beloved classics of children's literature. I am one of the people who loves this book despite its many flaws, so when I heard that it was being made into a comic, I hit that pre-order button faster than Amy throwing Jo's manuscript into the fire. And what I got was disappointing. So Meg, Jo, Beth, and Amy takes everything that you know and love about Little Women, the bond between sisters, Jo's ambition to become a writer, Amy's brattiness, Meg's gentleness, and Beth's piano music, I guess, and it turns it into a shallow caricature of itself. It's kind of like the dialogue for the comic was written by one of those talking dolls with a string in its back that just keeps repeating the same 5 sentences over and over without ever elaborating on their significance to the story. So let me give you an example. Throughout this whole book, the 4 girls are always saying, "We're the March Sisters," in response to their problems, as though their sisterly bond will act like some sort of magic wand to banish their problems in a poof of glitter. But the book never really shows us what the bond means to the girls. The author is so concerned with getting us to the next iconic scene from Little Women that there's no time to illustrate one of the most important qualities of the original, which is that each of the 4 girls grow and change precisely because of that sisterly bond. It may be really fun to write the scene where Meg goes to her wealthy friend's beach house and feels out of place amongst so much money and privilege, but any opportunities to show her character growth get swept under the rug by the author's incessant need to put "one day I'm gonna marry rich" into far too many of Meg's speech bubbles. Here's another thing. A lot of Jo's big character moments, especially when she's young, come from the friction between her and Amy. This culminates in the famous scene where Amy destroys the manuscript Jo's been faithfully working on for years. They have a colossal fight, with Jo's vowing to never speak to Amy ever again. Then Amy has a close brush with death, and Jo is instantly regretful that she held a grudge for so long because, after all, younger sisters are the most important people in your world, Jo, and once they're gone, you're never getting them back. Sorry, Beth. Sounds like it would make for a great set of panels, right? Except it doesn't happen this way in the book. Almost none of Jo's big character moments are illustrated in graphic form. Instead, they're tacked on in a series of increasingly cringy Dear Diary entries at the end of each chapter that mess up the flow of the story and relegate the most pivotal moments to footnotes I would rather skip over on my way to the next time they all shout, "We're the March Sisters." Don't get me wrong, there are so many things that this book tries to do right, from illustrating the characters to reflect the racial and cultural diversity of the American cities of today, to trying, if not very well, to bring more LGBTQ elements into the story. Which brings me to another critique. In this adaptation of Little Women, Jo is a lesbian, which is great, but it's written in a way that stretches the limits of credulity. Jo never mentions anything about her orientation until after her first kiss with Laurie, at which point we get another cringy diary entry about her big secret that she just couldn't tell anybody because it would ruin their friendship. This is a very valid concern to have as a young queer person debating whether or not they should come out. Which would be fine if we then didn't decide to never mention that part of Jo's interiority again until she's already passed through the crucial stage of adolescence dedicated to exploring your identity, when she just calmly tells her family, "I'm gay," and then they all go to the Women's March. And the book ends. Just like that. Yay? It really seems like there's no reason Jo's queerness exists in the story other than to score some diversity brownie points, since it's really awkwardly treated as a terrible secret and then never addressed until one throwaway sentence at the end of the book. And don't get me wrong, it isn't like being gay is the only interesting thing about Jo in this book, but this part of her identity could have been explored so much better than it was. And that was just super disappointing to me. Speaking of disappointing, and I know I will probably get some hate for this, but my actual least favorite part of this book is not the cringy diaries, the juvenile approach to diversity and intersectional identity, or having to hear the phrase, "We're the March Sisters," over and over again, until I want to rip out my own hair. It was the fact that Beth doesn't die. So, in the original book, Beth's death is not just one of the most impactful scenes in all literature, despite not even happening on the page. It is also a serious examination of one of the harshest realities of life, that sometimes the ones you love most die. Beth's death really pushes at the limits of how far the March sisterly bond can go, and the way her memory permeates the rest of the novel is a persistent reminder that the love between sisters can last, even after death. This book tries to recreate all that literary work, and just when you're about to reach for the tissues, Beth comes back into the room, miraculously recovered from her leukemia. What? Maybe this makes me an old curmudgeon, but Beth being allowed to die in the original story is really important to me. It is one of the most honest examples in fiction of the fact that life isn't fair, good people get taken too soon, and the living have to find some way to pick up the pieces and keep living. As a young child who had already lost both adults and other children who were really close with me and my family, I took a lot of comfort from the way Little Women deals with death as something permanent and sad, but also something that can't stop the love I have for the person who died. And in Meg, Jo, Beth, and Amy, that's just gone. I think what all of my criticisms of this adaptation ultimately boil down to is this. The book sets its characters up for these huge moments of growth and trial by fire, then at the last minute, their problems are waved away, like with a catchphrase like "We're the March Sisters," and suddenly everyone is happy and their problems are solved. Even the way the Women's March is just tacked onto the end makes it seem as though a one-time activist moment is not the beginning of something more, but a conclusion of the girls' hard work, a tidy bookend to their story where familiar beats happen without consequence or character growth. If you're reading this expecting it to be a good adaptation of Little Women, I think you're going to be disappointed, because honestly, it reads more like a SparkNotes summary dressed up in some superficial wokeness to make it hip with the youths. And if you're tempted to say, well, it's okay if this book isn't amazing, it's for kids after all, you'd be mistaken, because kids are smart. They know life's problems can't all be fixed with a smile and the veneer of sisterhood. Kids want to see themselves represented not just visually, but also emotionally, as fully rounded out people who can think and feel as deeply as adults, just with not as much life experience. So, have you guys read this book? Did you have any similar thoughts to myself, or did you really freaking enjoy it? Please do let me know down in the comments. We can go ahead and get a little discussion started there. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please go ahead and do so already. I'm going to really try and get to 300 subscribers by the end of this year. Thank you very much for making that happen. And thank you all, as always, so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.